What's up everyone, Jack from Half Chrome. I've got the Frsky Taranis X-Lite. This is a smaller gamepad style remote that you can use to control your quads. How does this stack up against the QX7, the Jumper T8SG, and maybe some others? Let's take a look. So right off the bat, I liked the way this thing feels in my hands. I grew up playing video games, and this just kind of feels like a video game controller. And you know, if you fly quads, it's not all that unlike playing some games. These gimbals are really pretty smooth. I would say though that my QX7, my X9D, the gimbals are just a little bit smoother. They're also longer on both of those larger remotes. These are a little bit smaller, so if I was a pincher, that might be a little problematic. I am not. I'm a thumb pilot, so these work just fine for me. Now, if we look at the design, you'll see there aren't a ton of switches. I've got a couple of two-way switches on the top here, a couple of three-way switches on the shoulders here, a couple of dials, and then some controls so I can work my LCD screen and my menus and things like that. That seems to be quite enough for me, as I usually have an arm, a mode, then over here I put my beeper, and then I have my turtle mode over here in case I crash, which happens a lot, and then I can flip my quad. Do I need anything more than that? Not really. Sometimes I want to put air mode on or off, FPV angle, but again, I usually do that with the mode switch, whether I'm flying acro or angle or whatnot. Other things that you're going to want to know, this little cap here twists off on both sides, and that's where the batteries go. It takes two 18500 batteries, which is a pretty standard battery size, right around 1000 milliamp hours or so. You can pick them up. They do not come with the remote, so you're going to have to do that. In the back here, there are a couple of adjustments, right? So if you want, it came with both sticks centered automatically. I don't want that for my throttle, so I had to adjust this bolt in the back to get that change, right? That didn't quite work for me, so I ended up taking this apart. Now, I took the spring off. I didn't actually have to do that. Turns out it was some wires that were in the way, but either way, I fixed that issue, so now it works just fine. I've heard that other people had the same issue where the wire kind of was in the way here. You had to move it out of the way, and then the adjustment did in fact do the trick. So something to keep in mind. Not hard to take apart. It's just two screws here, and then it'll pop off. What else do you need to know about this? Now, it does accept modules, but you can see that the modules are different. So it's not the JR Bay that you're used to from the larger Taranis's, but a new smaller one. So you can add a Crossfire remote. I've also got a multi-protocol module on the way, so I'm going to test that out on here. It operates on OpenTX, so if you've flown an Frsky remote before, it's the same darn thing, which is kind of cool. Now, how does this compare to some other remotes? So if you're looking for something small, really you have two options. You have the X-Lite, and then you have the Jumper. They feel about the same in my hands. The weight isn't all that different. I've got a lot more switches on the Jumper here. They both cost about the same, about $125, $130. Now, this one is multi-protocol. I do like the feel of the sticks on the Frsky and just kind of the ergonomics of the design as well on the X-Lite. I'm really a big fan of the QX7. Now, I loaned that out to a student to do some flying, so all I have is my X9D, which has seen better days. But they're roughly the same size. You can see the Frsky X-Lite is much smaller and lighter. Now, it doesn't have the vast array of switches that some other remotes do, but like I said, what more do you need than arm, mode, flip, and beeper, right? That's pretty much all I ever use, but maybe you use more, right? I do also have these dials, which I haven't bothered to program because I don't see that I'll probably use them. Maybe I will. If I do, I'll let you know. Something that was a nice bonus with the X-Lite, it came with a carrying case and a pair of gimbal covers, gimbal protectors, so that's going to keep this a little bit safer if I'm throwing this in a backpack. It's also smaller, which means it's easier to put in a traditional backpack, so I don't necessarily have to get a quad bag although I have one, I feel a lot better putting this in my bag, in this case, than I did about my QX7. I always felt a little awkward flying my little micro quads with a giant remote, right? This thing is bigger by far than the quad, and it just seems kind of odd to me, right? Is that a big deal? No. Now if I'm flying something big like this, it seems to make a little bit more sense, right? That I need a big remote, but flying these little micros, I feel like this X-Lite just does the trick. This Tiny Hawk and this X-Lite seem to be a match made in heaven. They just seem to go together. I don't have this awkward tiny quad, giant remote thing going on. They just work, and they're super easy, right, to store these two things in a bag, right, a small bag. I don't have to have this giant backpack that I have to lug around with me to keep my giant remote nice and safe. Now, this thing isn't perfect. Like I said, I had some issues with this left throttle where the wire was pinching. I actually had to take it apart to fix that. These adjustments, I've heard, don't work for everyone, where the throttle kind of has to get pushed every time you start it up, unless you remove the spring, which I ended up doing. Other things, these toggle switches are really small, specifically these two ways. I wish they were a little bit larger. The sticks, the gimbals are limited. They don't seem to adjust, which is kind of a bummer. I would have liked to seen it adjust to get a little bit longer. But otherwise, this is one heck of a remote. This is going to become my new daily driver. I'm going to use this because it is so portable, right? So for about 130 bucks, go ahead and pick one of these up. Now, Frsky does have one of these Pro versions on the way. It's going to cost a little bit more. I'm guessing closer to 200 or 230, but you're going to get a little bit better range, which is something that some people have complained about this. I've seen people modding the antenna or adding a crossfire system or module to this. So, do I like this? Absolutely. Right? Would I recommend it? Absolutely. Go ahead and check out the Frsky Taranis X-Lite. Hey, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and check us out on halfchrome.com. Happy flying.